Hey now, PD Grizz here, back at it again. How are you? Hope you are doing well. Anyway, today I have got a couple of things I put together myself. I've been interested in doing mods for a while. I put together a knife myself about a year ago, and it was a little rough around the edges. I didn't have some of the tools I needed, so I've been slowly gathering some of the tools and practicing, and I'm finally getting to the point where I'm starting to be happy with the results. First of all, what I've got here, this is the first one I've completed that I am actually pretty satisfied with. I basically made it as a test run. It's just a passenger, so that is a model that Victorinox had. They also made one called the Alpinier that had the word Alpinier across it. I believe it was a Canadian model. But the passenger is basically a Spartan with the addition of the magnifying glass layer with the inline Phillips. But this came from a old Champ C, and I took that apart and put this together just to practice. I will do a video soon on how to dismantle and assemble a Swiss Army knife for those interested. It's just there's the parts that are difficult is the main part that's difficult is getting dismantling them without butchering the rivets and the outer scales. You have to drill out the pins inside the rivets, but you need the rivets to put the knife back together. The rivets are hard to get other than just taking them off a knife, and they're very delicate and very easy to destroy. So it is very necessary to take your time. If you have a drill press, it's pretty easily, but to do it with a hand drill, you really have to be patient and use a center punch. But I'll get into all that in another video. But anyways, check this out. The passenger is a fairly obscure model. I see them up for sale pretty often. I see them selling for, I would say around $100 usually. And it's kind of interesting that, it's basically an Explorer minus the scissors. And you can pick up an Explorer any day you want. I mean, used, that is, for around 30, maybe $40 tops, even less than that, But, but then you take the scissors away, and that gives you a knife that is worth much more just because it's not so common. So the passenger has a corkscrew. Gotta have that Reamer. Bam! Of course, we've got the opening layer. Listen to the snap on that guy. I got the alignment good on this one. That's the other thing that's hard when you peen them. It's got no gaps in it. Everything's lined up nice and clean. The tools move freely with great snap. And the peening part is delicate. You can either, it's difficult. You got to form the rivet head just right without bashing, without missing and hitting the bushing, which is right against it, or the rivet cap, whatever you want to call it. And then if you over peen it, you'll make them too tight, and then the tools won't move freely. But listen to that sound. Fantastic. I mean, it feels like a factory knife. And I'm almost to the point where you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But I'm not quite there, but close. Next up, we got the can opener with the 2D Phillips. Again, great snap on all the tools. We got the magnifying glass with the gray housing. This was in pretty rough shape when I got it. It could still use. I just did a basic sanding just to take off some of the marks. The plastic gets all marked up. Still, even that plastic's got great snap, and that doesn't rebound quite as well as the steel parts do. So it's cool when the magnifying glass actually snaps. Got that wonderful inline Phillips. The other way you get an inline Phillips on a knife like this is to get the light versions that have the little LED light bulb in there. I'm not that big on them. I mean, I'll just carry a damn flashlight. You can have a little keychain flashlight and not have a need those goofy watch batteries, or have this switch getting turned on and off in your pocket and the light's dead by the time you go to use it anyway. We've got the pen blade. Even the pen blade moves freely on this. A friend of mine just mentioned, and I've noticed it too, especially now that he mentioned it, a lot of times the pen blades on modern knives don't move as freely. I don't know why that is. They did, if you look at old vintage knives, the shim was thicker on the end here. And by shim, I mean the part the keychain is cut to. It's a spacer. Really, it's a shim because it doesn't go the length. But what that does is offset the pen blade to make room for it to close between the liner and the main blade. The main blade is actually angled. The main blade is not straight. If you really look at them, it's flat on one side and then grounded at an angle, and that's what makes room for the main blade. If you look at the vintage knives, the shim is thicker, and the liner and spacer running down the length of this layer are not horizontal. The knife is actually fatter at the clip blade end than at the main blade end, and they thinned out the shim and thinned out the blade a little bit to make it now so it's square all the way down and parallel rather than being tapered. And finally, we've got the main blade, and I'm thinking that shim might have to do with why the old clip blades close a lot better than the modern pen blades. I mean, they work fine. It's just they often, not always, but often don't have the same snap. It's like they're rubbing, and they just don't feel like they come out as freely. Doesn't affect function, and usually they still snap, but you can feel a difference in them. And got our main blade, the 4-line tank stamp. This was made using like late 70s, early 80s parts. But the point is, this is not something I'm not going to be making my own versions of vintage knives I can't get. This was basically just what came to mind to make a practice knife. I posted a picture of it. People are asking me, oh, make me a yeoman, make me this. No, I'm not going to be making you a copy of a vintage knife and selling it to you. I don't think that's right. I wouldn't want somebody to have the knife and then pass it on to somebody else as a factory original. That's just not going to happen. But I will do is make some custom tool sets. So what we got here is I'm not going to say it. It's named after my buddy, my SAK friend. I still have a little work to do on it. Turned out one of the pins bent ever so slightly when I was peening it, and hence the scales aren't sitting all the way because the pin is basically bent a little bit outward. That dent was there. These are just junk scales I threw on it to see how the fit was, but the scale's not sitting flat because the pin is basically at a subtle angle, which kicked the rivet up a little bit, so it's not letting it settle down all the way. I couldn't even see it by looking at it, but that's why I test fit the scales, because sometimes problems won't bring themselves to light until you actually put it down. Still got some finish work to do with it, but the important thing is that everything fits right. Everything is nice and straight. Besides that little pin, it doesn't affect the operation at all. But it just, it affects the appearance, and I'm not satisfied with it. But what we got here is a custom tool set. So we'll start out with that Reamer. Bam. Now this is interesting. These are tools that don't normally go next to each other all the time. So it's a little tight getting that out, but it's no tighter than the way the chisel is behind a corkscrew or anything, so I'm pretty happy with that. Normally the Reamer and I think so. Yeah, normally the Reamer wouldn't be, that tight too. Normally the Reamer goes on the chisel or whatever, but I think I switched them around because it would have been hard to get the one out. So then we've got the fine tip screwdriver. I was going to put the older squared, like tapered one on here, but this nail nick was easier to get, and it would have been tough to get the original fine screwdriver out because it sits down like this chisel does, and then it wouldn't have the little dip in the liner to get the nail nick. So, and I also know the person I made this for, the priority was on the chisel. Because I originally had a layer without the old saw file, or the old saw layer that didn't have room for the back tool, and then I changed it to add that. But I asked him if he wanted the screwdriver or the chisel, and he said if it's one or the other, the chisel. But I was able to get them both in there. But I made sure the chisel was easiest to get out. And then finally we've got the round shank Phillips screwdriver. Fortunately, I would love to make it with a square Phillips, but I just don't have any knives that I'm willing to tear apart to rip one out of. I'll keep an eye out for junk knives that I can steal it from, but I hate taking apart a vintage knife, a perfectly good vintage knife, just for parts. So I won't be doing that unless I have a broken knife or just a knife that's cheap and redundant at least. So now we've got the cat lifter. Great snap, great action, looks great. Got to polish it up a little bit, but that's all finished work that I got to do. Then we got a can opener. Bong bong. Up next, got the wood saw. Basically, my friend is a woodworker. He does some carving and stuff, and he likes having the saw and the file for that. The scissors are of no use to him. I mean, basically, this would be a master craftsman tool set minus the scissors, or a hiker plus the file if you want to look at it, or even a ranger with the Phillips. Anyway, slice it. I love that people think that the tools are specialized by their names or anything. They're just modular. They put a combination of tools together and then come up with a name that seems to fit it. But you can basically mix and match any tools together. There are some layers you do have to be careful what order they're in. There are, especially with the pliers and scissors, it's important they have clearance between them. If you look at old knives, you'll notice, I don't think these ones are like that. Yeah, I don't have any close by. Okay, not even that one. I don't have any over here right now, but the old liners and spacers used to be full height and width. And then later they started making the room between them so they could thin them and get the tools closer together and then have more clearance between them. Because it used to be, especially with the wood saw, if that got bent even a little bit, it would catch on the liner and not close quite well. So I gave him the second version of the file, which is widely considered the best version of the file. You have the case hardened metal rather than the stainless steel. It can handle a little harder work. It's a little finer, gives you a more polished finish, and you've got the nail cleaning tip if you're into that sort of thing. Yeah, see, these scales don't even match. The front one does not have a notch. Like I said, I just threw these on just to finish it up. But I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's a cool set of tools. I've already had a couple other people say, oh, I need one of them. But I'm not in the business of making knives. I'll, make a few here and there, but frankly, they're kind of a bitch to work on. They require more patience than I often have. So I work on them in bits at times. I'll do a few minutes of work, and as soon as I get frustrated by something, I just step back, go do something else, and come back to it with a fresh mind and not pissed off and forcing anything or rushing anything, snapping drill bits, breaking the bushings, hitting the liners with a grinder, all that kind of stuff. The one thing that's difficult about these is that there are rivet caps. I don't have one here without the scales on it. There are rivet caps on 3 of the rivets, and then the pivot for the back tools is just a domed head. So you got a domed head that they form with a machine in the factory, and it takes a lot of skill. And also normally those domed heads aren't in such tight place. The domed head sits below a rivet right next to it. So you can't hit that rivet next to it with the hammer, so it's hard to get to the one side to dome it. Kind of do it with a center punch. The doming is leaving something to be desired, but you don't see that one anyway. But the problem is, because it doesn't have the rivet cap, you have to drill out right into the liner, and you got to get right against the liner, because if you don't clear the pivot, the pin head all the way, it'll warp the liner when you pull it off. Or if you hit the liner with the drill bit, and you're going to drill right through it in a second because it's aluminum. It's soft. Once you touch it, you've already ruined it. So it's a delicate balance to maintain. But anyway, thanks for watching, as always. I appreciate it. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peter Grizz out.